Plymouth. They made it back-to-back home wins after beating Luton 3-1. 3-word reviews for Plymouth. Matt on our Patreon says, proving doubters wrong. Johnny says, Wayne Rooney masterclass. Argyle Memes says, delicious Dilks tears. For Luton, Dan on our Patreon says, really painful watch. A big win for Plymouth, Justin, and I'll tell you what, it was fully deserved as well, wasn't it?
It really was. They were great. They were incredibly positive going forwards. Every time I've seen them, they were so direct at times, but also they had an element of control in their possession as well. So there was a lot of righting of the wrongs that they've had so far this season, and they were clinical as well. That was the key thing with Plymouth. And, they've not been decisive enough in terms of getting the ball into opposition area, and then when those opportunities have come, they haven't taken them. But what we saw here against Luton was I wouldn't say a masterclass, but as far as Plymouth goes, it was a much needed clinical performance from Argyle.
Yeah, Plymouth were really good. They were really good, without a doubt their best performance of the season so far, in my eyes. They caused Luton so many problems, and this is a defence on paper that is one of the strongest in the league at Luton as well, and they were getting torn apart by Plymouth on occasion. I thought Rami Al-Haj, who's a Swedish midfielder they signed in the summer, was excellent. Ibrahim Sissoko was superb when he came off the bench. He is proving to be one of the most exciting players for Plymouth, isn't he? I'm becoming an increasingly big fan of him. And Lewis Gibson as well pulled off some heroic defending. Don't get me wrong, they were still very open at the back on loads of occasions, and if Elijah Adebayo didn't have one of the worst games I've seen from a striker this season, it could have been a very different result. But once again, we're seeing clear improvement from Wayne Rooney's men, and you know what? Fair play to him, Justin.
I'm quite happy to say that I've pointed out that they have been improving. I know you've been not against the idea, but you've been a little bit harsher in your criticism of Plymouth.
I agreed that they were improving, but I just didn't think they were doing it to the extent that you were saying, because they still could have conceded a lot of goals, even in this game.
But if you look at how far they've come since the opening day, it is night and day. They are looking so much better. And I think when you have a performance as bad as that against Sheffield Wednesday on the opening day, not only does it set a really poor precedent for a manager who has a really bad record at Championship level, it does create a perhaps an unfair narrative. But we've needed to see a lot more to be convinced by Plymouth. This was a performance that justifies the things that we've almost been saying at times, just because that was a completely different one to what we've seen in previous weeks. It is a lot better. They were direct, as I say, they were controlled, they were composed. In possession, they were really, really good as well. There was just a lot there from Plymouth that we haven't really seen consistently enough throughout the season. So yeah, an absolutely brilliant performance from Argyle, and under lights at home park. Told you it would be a tricky one.
Well, even though we have been very critical of Plymouth and Wayne Rooney, nothing we've said has been incorrect, has it? They were terrible up until the past couple of weeks, really. But we have seen a week-by-week improvement, and that is encouraging, particularly going forwards. It looked like they had absolutely no game plan before, and they were barely laying a glove on teams, were they? Mm-hmm. But that has improved, even without Morgan Whittaker starting the season very well, actually. It's not really happened for him so far. But defensively, that's where I would still have concerns. I think they've still got plenty of work to do in that regard, because, as I was alluding to, they've conceded one in each of their last two games, but really could have conceded a lot more in both of them. And I will also say that I think things like squad depth could be a big problem as the season goes on. But we all wanted to see, what we wanted to see from Plymouth really was improvement on what we saw in the first few weeks. And we're certainly seeing that now. Whether it's as drastic as improvement as you think or I think, Justin, that's up for debate for another day. But they're without a doubt looking a lot better than they were, aren't they? And we thought we were seeing improvement from Luton Town, Justin. They had won back-to-back games, but it feels like with Luton right now, we're seeing one step forward, two steps back, aren't we?
Yeah, this was a really disappointing game. And you'd argue that the ruthlessness that they should have just isn't there. It is lacking, isn't it? For the amount of opportunities Luton had in the final third in terms of getting into space they were finding, I don't think they tested Daniel Grimshaw enough in the Plymouth goal. And it just feels like there's so much naivety at both ends of the pitch, really, both in front of goal and defending their own. It's really frustrating to watch when a team that is packed out with players that should be excelling at championship level, it's taken far too long for them to get going and get consistent, and it's super disappointing. And this performance here, they just felt like they, especially second half, felt like they went into a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Just curled up into a little ball a little bit. They're just very disappointing.
Their shell,
yeah,
very kind of thing.
They got very cuddly. Don't like that.
Yeah, cuddly in their little shell.
Yeah,
bloody Luton in their shell,
like a rabbit in a hat.
Rabbit in a hat.
I was making a hat as a joke there. It didn't really land as
no.
Nothing
I'd imagine for the past 30 seconds has landed really well, Justin, to be honest.
Yeah, might get edited out.
Kind of like Luton, really. Because, but let's be honest, I was so frustrated watching Luton here, because you've got a team which is so talented, but they're really not making that talent count, aren't they? They've got so many individuals in that team who would genuinely walk into the vast majority of championship sides, haven't they? But they're not performing. Elijah Adebayo is unfortunately the main one who I will have to pick out here, because he had an absolute stinker against Plymouth. And we're talking about a guy who scored double-figure Premier League goals last season. Justin, he scored more goals than Luis Diaz, Callum Wilson and Brian Mbeumo. But he's looked hopeless so far against championship defenders. But it's not just him. Tariff Chong has been completely anonymous so far this season. Jordan Clark has been poor, usually such an underrated player at Luton, but he's been really poor so far. And a back three of Reece Burke, Mark McGuinness and Ted Mengi should be rock solid, but it's not. So the players need to be better, but Rob Edwards also deserves a lot of criticism in my eyes. Justin, do you agree?
I do and I don't. I think I'll ask the question, do you think he's too nice? I thought it just popped into my head that Elijah Adebayo started most of the games so far this season, if not all of them. Do you think...
I think he had to,
he's not being
because
critical
Carlton
enough?
Morris was unavailable for whatever reason. And I don't think him being nice is... I don't think that really matters whether he's nice or not, because he was a nice guy when they got promoted. He's not turned into a bastard in that time, so...
No, I get what your point. I get what your point is, but I think they had a lot more good times when they got promoted, and they didn't really go through what they're going through now in terms of their run of form. And the point I'm trying to make about Rob Edwards maybe being a little bit too nice. Now, Luton fans may know a little bit more about him than I do, but he just comes across as a very good human being, and that's a massive positive. But when the chips are down like they are now, are the players getting away with a little bit too much behind the scenes? They're probably not. But it was just a question I thought I'd raise. But you are right. I do think Rob Edwards should face some criticism. I do think it's harsh still to criticise him, because he's not missing the chances that Luton are putting on a plate for Elijah Adebayo, for example. Elijah Adebayo's doing that. Rob Edwards can't control what happens on the pitch. But I think what has developed...
he can, because he's the manager.
Yeah, but he can't stand in the final third, can he? And put chances
I know what you
away.
mean. He's not the one kicking the ball, but he can control what happens on the pitch by not playing certain players.
Yeah, by dropping players, being a bit of a bastard, not being too nice. Again, it just the point rounds off quite nicely. But I think what has happened over the past 12 months, especially since Luton have been in the Premier League, is just feels like a bit of a soft underbelly. I know it's a bit of a football cliche and one that I don't really like using, but the goals they're conceding so incredibly poor and so repetitive and so avoidable. That screams to me of a soft underbelly.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Justin. I think they're also not controlling games as well as they should be, considering the talent they have, because they do look really vulnerable at the back and not the most convincing going forwards either, even though they get into loads of dangerous positions, but then when it actually comes to the end product, they're just not doing it. So very concerning watching Luton right now. And I'll tell you what, it wouldn't surprise me if Rob Edwards finds himself under a bit of pressure if he doesn't turn things around soon. I'm not suggesting he's in imminent danger of getting sacked, but it wouldn't surprise me if he does face a bit of pressure. Let's go to West Brom. Their unbeaten start to the season came to an end after they lost 3-2 away at Sheffield Wednesday. West Brom were 2-0 down, managed to pull it back to 2-2 before Wednesday scored the winner in the 86th minute to give them their first win since the opening weekend. 3-word reviews for Wednesday fans. Joe on our Patreon says, fan bloody tastic. Another empty voice says, it's been coming. Kane says, German fucking genius. I like that one. I think a good summary of this game, Justin, is you had two teams here at opposite ends of the form table heading into this game, but you would have easily been confused about who was out of form and who was in form watching this, because it was complete opposites, wasn't it?
But that's the Championship, isn't it? That's why we love it. That's why we bloody love it. But it was a surprise. I think when you look at the game in a little bit more detail, it probably, in terms of how Wednesday approached it, maybe, they burst out traps, maybe surprised the Baggies a little bit. West Brom were probably standing off a little bit too much, giving Wednesday a little bit too much respect in that first 20 minutes, probably too much licence, and that was pounced upon by the Owls like a bit of prey pouncing on a mouse. An owl doing what they do at sunset.
Swooping in, picking it up with the talons. Do owls have talons?
I have no idea what talons are.
I know eagles and hawks have talons. It's basically their feet and claws. I don't know if owls have them. Owls do hunt like eagles, though, don't they? So maybe they do.
Exactly.
I don't really know.
And they did that here. Which is what we're trying to say.
Exactly, that's the point. Yeah, you're right. Wednesday were great, but West Brom were very off it, particularly in the first half, which is so strange because they've been so dominant in recent weeks. They've been top of the table on merit, haven't they, really? Mm-hmm. So a real surprise for them to be so flat in the first half. Of course, it cost them and left them 2 goals down. They did well to get it back to 2-2, but it would have been harsh on Wednesday not to get all 3 points here based on the overall balance of play, because they were much the better side, particularly with bits of quality like that Josh Windass header. Justin, talk to me about that. That was a proper beauty, and this is coming from someone who is a proper admirer of a good header.
If this was scored by proper number 9, I think I'd love it more. But I think because it's from Josh Windass, I'm not sure he meant it entirely.
Oh, come on!
I'm not taking anything away from the goal, apart from I am. But it was a lovely. But it was a lovely goal. It really was. I think the hardest part about that goal is judging the flight of the ball.
Yes.
Because I think you can head it and hope you can head it in the direction of the goal and maybe catch the keeper out, which he did. But I think if you're not a player who uses the head to the level of composure like a Matt Smith of yesteryear or a Michael Smith of today, I think it's a much harder chance to pull off. So I think this being Josh Windass, it was much harder than it would have been for a Matt Smith or a Michael Smith. Not a Smith thing, just big burly number 9s.
Of course. I'm not sure I get what your point is. I think whatever player it is, it's a brilliant header. I think a lot of people may not appreciate how difficult it is to do because it is a header, but to not only execute it as well as he did, lobbing it over the keeper, but to have the awareness that the keeper was off his line. It's just an excellent header, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. And it helped Wednesday to a well overdue win, didn't it? They'd been on a stinking run since smashing Plymouth on the opening day. They have been a bit unlucky in that time. Had some really tricky games in there as well, but they badly needed a positive result just to turn the tide, I guess. And I always felt like it would turn around sooner rather than later. So that was good to see because Danny Rowell's a really good manager, despite you recently casting aspersions against him, Justin.
What gives you that idea?
At the weekend, on Friday, you were saying how you think Neil Harris is a better manager than him. And when we were doing a Zamora Time episode, you accused me of rating Danny Rowell too highly. Yeah,
I think I'll stand by that. I'm not a Danny Rowell skeptic by any means. I love Danny Rowell. I think he's a great manager. He's got so much potential. But I think it's fair to ask questions of a manager who's not won since the opening day of the season. What he did last season was remarkable, but this season is new. Expectation changes, pressure increases. I think an example I can think of is Roberto Di Matteo lost his job at Chelsea within 6 months of winning the Champions League. I don't think what he did last year has too much of an impact on what he does this season, because I say things have changed. Team's been performing poorly. Results have been pretty poor. You got to get back to winning ways, and he's done that.
Okay, I'm sensing a bit of scepticism from.
No, there's no You just want to stir things up. You're purely thinking of content here. You're purely thinking of clipping things up and dropping me in it when you're firing up for the likes. That's what you're doing.
I have no idea what you're talking about. West Brom, they remain top of the league despite this loss. Josh Maja got on the score sheet again. 7 goals in 7 now for him. But unfortunately, tragic news in this game because a West Brom fan died after suffering a medical emergency in the stands. West Brom and Sheffield Wednesday have both put out statements calling it tragic. We, of course, send our best wishes to the man's family and friends. Let's go to Ellen Road, where Leeds have now won 4 from 5 after beating Coventry 3-0. 3 Road episode reviews for Leeds. Elliot says, a class above. Peter says, big season ahead. Ashley says, I love Willie. For Coventry, Lee says, hate slow starts. Cov Boss says, we are shit. We've been saying Leeds haven't been amazing so far, Justin, despite the 14 points on the board. I think this was their best performance of the season. This was so comfortable for Leeds, wasn't it?
So comfortable, scintillating. They were sensational. They were really good to watch back, to be honest with you. It felt like wave after wave of attacks. It felt like, Falk ball was really, really in full flow. Where they were exploiting space, they were exploiting wide areas, they were getting runners in behind. It was so good to see. And I mean, a big example of that is how often Junior Firpo and Jayden Bogo found themselves in Coventry's box. They were really, really good. And like I was saying in the previous show on Friday, Coventry had been incredibly weak through midfield, and Leeds played through them time after time. It's a huge concern for Coventry, but my God, did Leeds exploit it.
They really did. Elan Meslier was not troubled at all until right at the end of the game, where he had to make a save from distance. Which... Daniel
Farker quote after the game, he said he was hoping that Meslier wouldn't be asleep, which is a bit of shade towards Coventry, but it did make me laugh because Germans aren't supposed to be funny as it goes, and that was
a good very stereotypical thing to come out with out of nowhere, but that's fine. He wasn't troubled at all until he had to make that save right at the end, which really came out of nowhere. But by that point, the game was done and dusted anyway. Leeds really were in cruise control throughout this and made really light work of a very strong Coventry side. Yes, we all know they haven't had a great start to the season, but they haven't played that badly and have a lot of talent in there amongst their ranks, don't they? And this could have been a banana skin for Leeds, but they did just dispatch of them with very little fuss. So it was a very encouraging showing. And I think Leeds have been in second gear so far. And while this wasn't top gear, I definitely think they're moving up the gears based off this performance anyway. Just to be on now 7 games into the season. At this stage last season, we had Leicester and Ipswich miles ahead of everyone. They were tanking it along from the word go, really, weren't they? We haven't had a team do that so far this season, but at this stage, would you say Leeds are the team to beat this season? Our friends at SPK have them down as the clear 11-8 favourites to win the championship. So what are you thinking?
Yeah. With Leeds having the players that they've got and seeing what they can do when not actually at their best, it's quite scary. I mean, you look at Ramazani peppering Coventry at every given moment in this game. Willie Nonto's movement was incredibly fluid. The amount of times I mentioned Junior Firpo and Jayden Bogle stretching their games, getting into the opposition box. If they're in full flow, Leeds, they are a terrifying prospect at championship level under Daniel Farker, which is why I think that the criticism of him from Leeds fans at various points this season so far was pretty unwarranted because he's blending together a new team. Now, if this is what he can do, having just had 4 weeks with everybody, by the way, close of the transfer window was only at the end of August. He's had just a handful of weeks with these players. Then, what they can potentially do is quite scary. So, certainly are the team to beat. I mean, just as I say, stereotypically, you want to beat Leeds anyway. Everybody does.
yeah, I know what you mean. But yeah, you're right. I mean, Leeds have been a bit hot and cold so far, and I think a few Leeds fans have been a bit questioning Daniel Farke, haven't they? But they're not the only ones who have been hot and cold so far. It depends really how much you interpret them when they're cold. And with Leeds, I think it's just a team moving through the gears. Other sides like Burnley and Sheffield United, for example, the first teams who come to mind for me in that regard. I think it's more stylistic when they're cold, and that's where the problems lie. But Leeds definitely have the strongest squad in the league, don't they? Not just in terms of the first 11, but also in terms of depth. Mm-hmm. My main concern with them would be whether we would see a repeat of last season with them dropping silly points here and there. But there's a good chance they could do that again, I suppose, and still end up winning the league. Because no one's grabbing me by the scruff of the neck, Justin, and screaming in my face, this is our year, because we're still yet to see that. So if you boil it down to pure strength and the misgivings of others, I definitely say Leeds are the most likely at this stage. Still a long way to go, don't get me wrong, but 4 wins from 5 clean sheets in 6 as well. moving through the gears nicely, aren't they?
It's defensively that gets me for Leeds. They've got such a talented attack, but defensively they are a different proposition than to what a lot of the teams are in this division. They will not concede chances. They will make things look very easy. I mean, you've only got to look at last season's disciplinary record. I know it doesn't really say much, but they're not giving too many fouls away, not giving up too many yellow cards because they don't need to. They're a very clean opposition, and I think that's a very difficult team to play against.
Yeah, well, we've always said that, haven't we? The back 5 or 6 for Leeds, without a doubt, the best in the league. Brilliant. No one comes close, really, in that regard, do they? And if Leeds are moving through the gears nicely, Justin, then Coventry have definitely stalled, haven't they? 1 win from 7 now for them, and while we all know Leeds away is probably as difficult a fixture as you'll get all season, Coventry were so poor here, and actually, I'm going to take it back. I don't think they have stalled. It's perhaps more a case of taking off the handbrake and rolling backwards down a hill really quickly. That's what I'm seeing with Coventry right now, Justin, unfortunately.
It's a bit of a disaster. It's probably about that time of year where Mark Robins makes a major tactical change because it's needed. You look at last season where they were playing 3 at the back, it went to 4-2-3-1 and it clicked. Need to see something from them now, because I don't know whether that warrants a formation change, a philosophy change or what, because they are just so poor. Like I said, Leeds found it so easy to play through them. And look, Leeds are a strong side. You're going to give away chances to this Leeds team because of how much talent they do have. The amount of chances Leeds had was quite frightening. 3-0 maybe flattered Coventry a little bit. Ben Wilson was a very, very busy boy in the goal for Coventry. So, yeah, this was a probably more concerning performance than the one I've seen so far from Coventry. And again, I know Leeds are a strong outfit, but just how vulnerable every time Leeds went forward, how vulnerable Coventry looked, it's a red flag for me. Bit of a red flag.
Yeah, more red flags than China, I think you're absolutely right. And you talk about how they could have conceded more than 3. I think they could have been playing until next week and not scored, because they did not put a glove on Leeds at all, did they? And the thing is, Ben Sheaf was back for this game, his first start of the season. How fit he is, I don't know. But one would suggest not very, after only playing 17 minutes prior to this. But they've badly missed him, and it didn't really have much of an effect at all. So you're just looking at Coventry and they've been so off it, and the fact they seem to be getting worse is very concerning. The thing is, Coventry faced a pretty strong Spurs team in the Cup just over a week ago, didn't they? And gave them one hell of a game. But then when they come up against Championship opposition, it's a completely different story. So what's the reason? It's really puzzling. I can't offer any sort of explanation as to why that is a thing, because it really shouldn't be. But what I can say is they'll only be making it harder for themselves later on down the line if they do have their, now traditional pickup around November time, Justin. But I suppose the question has got to be asked, what if that doesn't happen? Could we potentially get to a position where, say it quietly, Mark Robins could be in danger?
That is the worry. I think you can take for granted those mid-season pickups in form, can't you? You can take for granted because it's happened the last 2 seasons. You can expect it to happen again. Whereas I think the big changes that have happened at the club, i.e. Dennis Lawrence and Eddie Verbash leaving, the coaching staff leaving, and then you're losing old guard members of the squad like Kyle McFadden, Liam Kelly, Matty Godden. That does have an impact on things. He doesn't have those variables with him anymore. This is a new set of circumstances for Mark Robins. So it's going to be interesting to how he deals with it. And as you say, the concern is, what if they don't pick up in form? That is a good question to raise.
They haven't looked like a Mark Robins team so far,
have
they, this season, which is one thing we can definitely say, and that is a concern. And Doug King, the owner, is putting a lot of money into the club, hasn't he? He will be expecting results, and even though Mark Robins is basically a god in Coventry, you wonder how much that resolve will be tested.
Quick 2 questions. Both Luton and Coventry spent a lot of money over the past 2 years. Do you think the rise in expectations is going to impact things?
I mean, Luton haven't spent that much money, I don't think. Even when they were in the Premier League, I don't think they spent that much money. But
more than they used to, which is
definitely. But I mean, considering they were in the Premier League last season, I suppose it does change expectations. And I'm seeing a lot of Luton fans very unhappy when, I guess 5 years ago they would have been absolutely delighted to be mid-table in the Championship at this stage in the season. But expectations do change. That's just how time works. And Coventry's does as well, considering they've spent so much money in the past couple of seasons. So that's why, even though Mark Robins has done a lot of good for Coventry, as time goes on, if this does continue for another few weeks or so, then maybe Doug King may be starting to consider a change. Who knows? It's now time for us to check out how our second-tier bet builder and multiple with SBK got on, which included our game of the week, as well as just a nice 2 bankers from Friday. So our bet builder was in the Plymouth v Luton game, and a £5 stake was due to return at £144. We had under 3.5 goals, which didn't come in. Carlton Morris to score. Didn't actually play. I'm not too sure why he didn't play in this game. If we had Adebayo to score, then that would have been bloody frustrating. Adam Randell to be carded. That one did come in. That was a really good shout from me, if I do say so myself. And then Luton to win, which obviously didn't come in either. So no luck for us there in terms of the bet builder. And we couldn't make it 2 out of 2 with the multiple either. That was due to return £72 from a tenner. We had Luton and West Brom, who obviously didn't win. But we did have Leeds. So no luck there in terms of the bet builder. What were you going to say, Justin? Go on.
Well done, me.
Look at this guy. Pathetic. We'll be back with our next round of picks in this coming Friday's preview show with SBK. Let's go to Cardiff. They were thumped 4-1 away at Hull in their first game since sacking Errol Bullitt. 3 reviews from Hull fans. Simeon on our Patreon says, finally attacking football. Joe says, has Walter Ball arrived? For Cardiff, Ninian Slopper Leckwith on our Patreon says, I hate football. Only 2 teams in Championship history have now picked up fewer points than Cardiff after 7 games. Only 1 team has scored fewer goals after 7 games than the 2 that Cardiff have scored. Only 2 have conceded more than the 17 that they've let in. So they're at the stage now, Justin, where they are legitimately having one of the worst starts we've ever seen at Championship level.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what can you say to that? It's just terrible, isn't it? It's just terrible. It's a dumpster fire at Cardiff at the moment. And once again, I mean, we've spoken about it at length already. Don't need to skirt over it too much, but just the inability to have another coach lined up to give it a caretaker manager once again is just very Cardiff City, and this is unfortunately the rewards for that. Some of the goals they conceded arguably were just comical at times. Some of the chances they conceded again was just comical at times, and I think it was summed up. Well, I wouldn't say nicely. The opposite to nicely is, Omar Risa, the caretaker coach, suggesting 4-1 was a harsh scoreline. I think maybe Cardiff could have scored 1 or 2 more. They created a decent amount of chances, but I think 4-1 again probably flattered Cardiff a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that, Justin. I actually do, and I think it just gives a great example of how whoever this new manager is, they have well and truly got their work cut out, haven't they? It's just an omni-shambles. Problems at both ends of the pitch. I mean, yes, they did have a few more chances than they have done in recent games against Hull, but still, just the 2 goals scored all season. 17 conceded from 7 games is unbelievable. And yeah, I'm struggling to find positives currently. It's not a very attractive position, and whoever wants it must really want it. Because otherwise I won't
think you could offer it me right now, to be honest with
you. But I suppose that brings me nicely on to Nathan Jones, who of course is a big Cardiff fan, currently Charlton boss. He said, I make no secret about the Cardiff job because it is my hometown club and all the affiliations I have there. One day I would really, really love to manage the football club. So, at least he's being honest, Justin.
Just fucking take it, Nathan. This is doing me head in now. It's every week. It feels like every week. I mean, Cardiff go through a new manager every week. That's a joke. But also, yeah, Nathan Jones is linked to the job. It's a complete cycle, isn't it? Cardiff are available. Nathan Jones talks about it in the media. Nathan Jones doesn't get the job. Nathan Jones tells us he wants the job, literally wants to, said it. And then Cardiff appoint someone completely random, and then the cycle starts again.
Yeah, it's a bit like Milhouse in The Simpsons, isn't it? Where he's trying to constantly get Lisa's attention, but she's just not interested at all. Even though, really, Cardiff should be loving the chance to get someone like Nathan Jones, because I think he'd be a good appointment for Cardiff. But whether that actually happens or not, I'm not too sure. You feel like it's got to happen at some point. Cardiff are reportedly waiting until the international break to appoint their new manager. So keep in mind, we have got a midweek round of fixtures coming up, so there'll be another 2 games where it's going to be Omar Rizza in charge for both of them as well. Yeah, interesting to see whether things actually get better before that international break. Otherwise, Cardiff could be in an even poorer position than they are right now, couldn't they? Bit of an interesting one, Justin. Have you seen that Cardiff could soon be competing for qualification for European football? Because the BBC say them, Swansea, Wrexham and Newport, i.e. the Welsh teams in the English Football League, are in talks to enter the Welsh League Cup, where the winner would qualify for the Europa Conference League. It would mean that they sacrifice qualifying for European competitions in the same way as your normal English side. So, for example, Swansea played in the Europa League after winning the League Cup in 2013, didn't they? That wouldn't happen if that were to happen again. And the idea is that it would give Wales a better chance in European competitions and improve their coefficient ranking. Also, more money for Wales as a nation and other benefits, I suppose, as well. But what do you think, Justin? I've seen a lot of people say, well, they should go back to the Welsh leagues then. But I think it sounds like quite a cool idea.
I think it does and it doesn't. I think there's a huge amount of sympathy for the Welsh teams like TNS and Colwyn Bay. The New Saints. They're the only two teams that have they're the only teams that have come to my head so
Airbus
far.
UK.
Yep. I'm sure there's
teams I see on Football Manager every so often.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a university in there as well. Which this is incredibly disrespectful to football.
I think is one as well.
Yeah, Ballatown's another one. But I think I have a great deal of sympathy for them because that's their route into European qualification. They're all great stories. I think it was Bangor Town. They played Legia Warsaw in qualifying over the summer. So that for me is their competition, and obviously.
What I would say to that though, Justin, is they've had this chance for. They've had so many chances to get into, do something in Europe, and they just haven't, have they? I think the New Saints, I'm right in saying, this season is the first time a Welsh side has got to the group stages of a European competition in a long, long time, and that's this season. And they'll probably just get battered because I don't know what the standard of the Welsh league is.
How much of an incredible story that is, and you take away from that by allowing Swansea, Cardiff, Newport and Wrexham to come in.
Surely they benefit though if it improves the coefficient ranking of the nation as a whole, because then they'll get more money going into the competition from a domestic level.
Yeah, but they'll never play in a European competition again.
No, but then what would happen is if say, I don't know, Swansea, for example, did really well in the Europa Conference League, then over time that would improve the coefficient ranking, and then the Welsh domestic league may get European places in that regard, because at the moment I don't think they do.
That's years away. That is a long time away.
But it's not going to get better anytime soon, is it?
Well, it may or may not. But I think New Saints doing what they're doing now, and they're in the group stages now. I think that is as good as it will get. And again, with the likes of Cardiff and Swansea, yes, the European away days will be great for fans, but also they're going to need bigger squads. They're going to need to invest a little bit more into their squads. Do they have that sort of money? Yes or no? If they're in the Championship, they definitely won't. Wrexham will be fine. We know that. So again, is it really worth it for the likes of Cardiff and Swansea with a busy Championship schedule to then be pumping tons of more European games in there? It would be great. But is the reward worth the risk? That's the other question.
It's up to them, isn't it? We'll see how it goes. But it sounds like they're keen to do it. But yeah, it's certainly an interesting one, which has caused quite a bit of debate from what I've seen on social media. So yeah, I want to keep an eye on. We'll go to Hull, shall we? Because, Cardiff have had a pretty stinking start to the season, and Hull were also having a stinking start to the season, but they've now won back-to-back games, Justin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were fantastic here. 7 goals in the last 2 games is quite the turnaround from fans wanting Tim Volter out. Yeah, it's I won't say an extraordinary turnaround, but I think it's just a case of they're going to go through their bumps. You look at how open this game was at times. Cardiff probably created more chances in this game than they have done in any other game so far this season, and they come away with a 4-1 defeat. It just tells you that Volta Ball is going to be a little bit open. But I think what I saw here was a lot of attacking endeavour, and Hull really putting Cardiff to the sword. Balumi looks a brilliant player. His first goal was really good. I think I'm right in saying he rasped the bar as well after knocking Jamila Collins off it with great ease. Just the composure he's got and the skill and technical level that he's got. Really, really positive. So, yeah, this is a very good step in the right direction for Hull. Maybe a pinch of salt because it was Cardiff and how poor they've been, but you play the opposition you play.
Yeah, they had, as you say, scored just twice in their first 5 games and now have scored 7 in 2, which is a pretty ridiculous turnaround, isn't it? But we may finally be seeing the heart attack football that we were promised when Tim Volter took over. And it must be said that the 2 wins have come against a Stoke side who self-imploded last week and a Cardiff side who have been appallingly bad. So we need to see a bit more before coming to any conclusions with Hull, but all being well, they should be a good watch this season. Bashir Bloomy, who you mentioned there, Justin, I wanted to point him out as well. 22-year-old winger from Algeria, who they signed from Farense in Portugal. He looks a really good player. I've been so impressed with him in the last couple of games. But, I mean, there's a lot of talent at Hull, isn't there? It's just about how they settle in after a very busy summer and how they gel with the new manager. One other thing I will mention is they've got to stop conceding first, because it's happened in every game so far, bar a 0-0 draw with Millwall. So that's a real problem that they have to sort out ASAP, but we're certainly seeing positive signs, considering Tim Volter was very close to getting sacked not too long ago, wasn't he? And now there was a fair bit of controversy at Pride Park on Saturday lunchtime as Norwich beat Derby 3-2. 3-word review from Derby fan Ben. Cheated. Owen says Lino's a twat.
Tell us how you feel.
For Norwich, Ben says, over what line? The controversy massively stemmed from Norwich's first goal, where Josh Sargent was deemed to have kept the ball in while assisting Boya Sayeens, even though the ball had very clearly gone out. And it's such a poor call, Justin.
I'm a calm man, aren't I? You think I'm a relaxed individual? I'm quite laid back.
Yeah.
I was frothing at the mouth in the stand. I was a pit bull unleashed. I was so angry. But, I've since calmed down. I do have a degree of sympathy with the linesman. I'm going to point out he should have spotted it. These are the easy decisions. But everyone makes mistakes, don't they? Come on, everyone makes mistakes. He just gets
Let's see if you were saying
them.
that 24 hours ago when you were at the game.
Yeah, I wasn't. I will add. Linesman made a big error, huge error. A couple of big errors, actually. But the first one, the Sargent one, was a horrendous error from him, and he will learn from it. That doesn't happen if Nathaniel Mendes-Lang doesn't give the ball away. Yeah, it's that sort of thing. We're completely skirting over Mendes-Lang cocking up massively and not winning the ball back, and then we're concentrating on a linesman.
I think we can excuse people forgetting about that, just in considering it was such an awful call from the linesman. Because, I mean, for a professional linesman, that's a pretty embarrassing decision. It's not like it's on the other side of the pitch. It's happened 10 yards in front of him, and it's not even close to staying in, really. As I say, if you're a professional linesman and you're not seeing that, then bloody hell. The thing I would say as well, if you're not sure, surely you just put your flag up anyway.
Because you do tend to favour the defensive side, yeah.
Yeah, because a goal kick is going to have fewer consequences than a goal in the grand scheme of things, isn't it? So it's a clanger all round. And then the same linesman didn't spot the ball going out again in the build-up for Norwich's third goal. So he was having a bad day, wasn't he?
It was a bad day. I'm probably a little bit more sympathy for the third one because he's looking across a line, isn't he, with goalposts in the way.
Definitely. But the first one, he's right in front of it.
Yeah, the first one's got to be spotted. He did miss an offside about 10 minutes before that as well, which was quite obvious. He was just, he was having a bad day. I think the most annoying thing about that is it was a sunny day and he wasn't on the side where the sun's blaring in your eyes either. So you can't even use that as an excuse. He was in the shade.
Yeah, he just had a shitter.
It was made worse by Specsavers tweeting several times on the game. Specsavers
are having an absolute trolling PR masterclass, aren't they, by just getting on top of every single bad refereeing decision. It was funny though, because I was at this game, as we were alluding to earlier, Justin, without any pants on, and the other linesman at the start of the second half was running towards the goal to check the nets, and he was getting booed, and he looked at the Derby fans and very visibly said, "It wasn't me." Just throwing his colleague under the bus. But yeah, another win for Norwich. It's 3 from 4 now for them. And the man of the moment here was Boya Sayeens, who scored a hat-trick. He's got 6 goals for the season now. And he is a cracking player, isn't he?
He really is. I was so blinded by rage, it took me about 2 hours until after the game finished to realise Boy Signs scored a hat-trick. It's just so angry with the decision. But he was electric all game. I think the game was tight for large spells. I think a draw probably ironically would have been a fair result for both these sides, but the difference maker was Boy Signed. I mean, that the first goal with a flick, I forgot. I didn't see it because I was so enraged. I didn't see how sexy his flick was. It was a beautiful bit of composure in the box. And even his second goal, where he turns inside and runs off his marker, was given the freedom of Derby or lad. He should have been closed down, but he took his goal brilliantly. He gives me Benrahma vibes. I don't know about you, but just the way he goes inside. He's an agile player. He's quick on the turn. And he's slowly maturing into the Championship as well. I think he's going to hit double-figure goals quite easily this season. I mean, he's very close to it now.
So
yeah, but
I'd be disappointed if he doesn't.
To be fair, I tweeted and said he's going to hit 15, but I just wanted to give myself a little bit of a cushion on here.
You coward! I'm not sure about Benrahma because I think he's a bit of a different player in the way that he's just so direct, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
He as soon as he gets the ball, he is heading straight for goal every single time. And I mean, we saw plenty of glimpses last season of how good he is. But with the likes of Gabriel Sara and Johnny Rowe leaving in the summer, they needed him to step up, didn't they, Norwich?
They really did, yeah.
Boy, has he. And I tell you what, they particularly needed it because Josh Sargent's looked a bit off it for me so far. He got 2 assists in this game, actually, to be fair, but hasn't been up to his usual standards, I would say. One of them, as you probably just said then, a bit dodgy. But as long as Sainz continues this form, it won't matter so much how Josh Sargent plays because he's such a thrilling player, loves to cut in from the left, has the end product to make it count as well. He could be one of the best attackers in the division this season because there's every chance he's a Premier League player in the near future. I think he's got so much about him. Pretty good showing from Derby, actually. They'll rightly feel hard done by, but certainly no shame in defeat for them here. No goal for Ryan Nyambe in this one for Derby. He's now 11 games away from breaking the record for the most games at Championship level without scoring a goal. Feels big, this, doesn't it, Justin?
I did message you 20 minutes into the game. You didn't read it, I will add.
Can't get a signal. You never get a signal at Pride Park.
Incredibly rude. I did message you saying there's a reason why Ryan Nyambe's never scored in his career. There was a point where he had a direct angle to shoot, didn't take it. Coward.
No. Still yet to have a shot this season, I will point out.
I would celebrate that.
I don't think I'm not fancying his chances to score before the 11th game mark. We'll put it that way. Sunderland dropped points for just the second time this season away at Watford. They lost 2-1. 3-word review here from 773 Southside on our Patreon. Gracias, Senor Neil. Very even game. Looked like it was heading for a draw. And then Dan Neil gives away one of the daftest penalties you'll ever see in your entire life. What on earth was he doing, Justin?
Yeah, he's got a bit of a hot-headedness about him, hasn't he? I mean, we had that great debate last season when he was sent off for swearing at the referee, if you remember. He's got a bit of bite about him, maybe a bit of hot-headedness, as I say. And sometimes he's a young player, and I think this is a thing you need to stress with Sunderland, is they're all very young. I think Dan Neil's 21, 22, isn't he? So he's still learning his trade, he's still learning his game. He's got captain armband as well, when he did take down the Watford player. They're going to make mistakes. You're going to have a rush of blood, and these things are going to happen. Didn't need to do it, as you say, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. One of the stupidest things you'll see a player do all season. Watford offered so little threat in that second half and have somehow come out of it with all 3 points. In fairness to Dan Neil, he took full accountability for it after the game. But God knows what he was thinking when that happens. But it's another win for Watford, and they'll be absolutely delighted with that. Just when it looked like they were fading after a good start to the season, they get 3 points against one of the best sides in the division so far. Did they deserve it? Probably not. But it's a big result. And Tom Cleverley's yet to lose a game at Vicarage Road as manager, by the way. Not bad for a rookie, is it? One of the more interesting news stories, which has caught my eye in the past 24 hours, Justin, The Sun is reporting Birmingham are plotting an ambitious move for Sunderland's Chris Rigg. The American owners are able to spend more freely in League One and are taking full advantage of it, as I'm sure we're all aware by now. But they apparently fancy their chances of getting Chris Rigg. Thoughts?
No. Just no. I saw a fee of £10 million touted, and I don't know whether that's just various outlets reporting various figures. But £10 million seems too cheap. If Birmingham can afford to spend £20 million, then sure. Because I think I'm very reluctant at paying a lot of money for teenagers because I don't think they yet establish themselves. I think there's a lot of risk there. But I think Chris Rigg is certainly worth it. But Birmingham in League One, come on. I think even Chris Rigg as a 17-year-old will say, I'm all right at the minute, thanks.
Yeah. It doesn't really make much sense, does it? Because Sunderland will be... No, not at all. Sunderland will be fully aware that their days of holding on to Chris Rigg are probably numbered because he's going to be attracting a lot of interest from some big clubs. But why sell him to a team who are quite likely to be in the same league as them next season? I just don't understand it. It may be true. Maybe Birmingham are looking at it thinking we could try and get him, but I just don't see any logic in selling him to a club who aren't going to be in one of the top 5 European leagues for at least a couple of seasons. So yeah, very, very strange one, but we'll keep an eye on that, I suppose. Millwall got their second win of the season at home to Preston. They won 3-1. 3-road review here from Millwall fan Al. Super Neil. I was surprised that this was just Millwall's second win of the season. Feels like they've won more. No idea why I thought that, but it certainly caught me out. But Millwall were very good, weren't they? George Honeyman had a cracking game, getting a goal and an assist. But I wanted to put the spotlight, Justin, on 19-year-old Romain Essa, who's really stood out for me so far this season in a Millwall shirt. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I pointed him out earlier on. No, before the season started, as sort of my young player to watch this season. I can't remember exactly what the term was, but I picked him out, so I've clearly got knowledge there. But I think he's a player who brings a directness to Millwall. He's still only 19 as well, which is incredibly young. He probably needs to improve his consistency, but he's still a kid. I mean, he took his goal. The comparison I'd take his goal was great here against Preston, but I think he's got that rawness. He's got a directness that Millwall probably need. I don't think they've got a lot of it. I don't think they've got a lot of pace either. And SA, brings it all in abundance. And I think he's a player who's going to keep improving. Because again, I think you can put a little bit too much on young players and expect too much. A little bit disappointed with him at times last season, but again, you forget he's 18 and he's 19 this season. So he's got gears to go.
Yeah, he really has. He's had such an exciting start to the season, and I get what you're saying. I remember when he scored a goal with one of the first few games of last season against Middlesbrough, and then I almost completely forgot he was at Millwall. But I was a bit worried about Millwall having a lack of quality out wide. So him stepping up is massive this season, and he's definitely one to watch, particularly when his confidence is seemingly growing and growing, because he is a thrilling young talent in the Championship. It's got to be said. Preston have gone a bit under the radar recently, haven't they? Of course, they had the manager changes at the start of the season, which we gave plenty of airtime to, Justin, but no win in 4, and I've got to say they're playing pretty poorly. Should we perhaps be a bit more worried about them?
I think we can be worried purely on results. They are not defending as well as we used to under Ryan Lowe. They were very good at keeping opposition at bay at times, and probably one of the better defensive teams in the division last season, from mid-table side anyway. But I think the issue they've got now is they are leaking a fair amount of goals and lacking a bit of bite in the final third as well, which they desperately need.
Yeah, well, their underlying data is appalling. That has got to be pointed out. They've got the lowest XG in the league, as well as the third lowest XG against. Even with just the eye test, though, they've been so poor. I thought Paul Heckingbottom was a good appointment when he came in, and I had almost just assumed they would get better. But aside from that win against Luton, there doesn't seem to have been an improvement. And even in that win against Luton, they're on the back foot for most of the games. So, yeah, I'm getting increasingly worried about them, I would say. I get Heckingbottom still fairly new to the job, but it doesn't look like his appointment is having the desired effect so far, shall we say. And finally, Justin, we've got huge news, monumental news, in fact. Mick McCarthy is reportedly set to appear on this year's edition of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, according to the Ipswich Town website TWTD. Come on, Justin, this is what the world needs.
There are so many meme opportunities here. I mean, we still promised the Mick McCarthy film, by the way, that we're hopefully going to get of the Irish camp in World Cup 2002. Yeah, there's not, you can't forget about that. And then there's this. Mick McCarthy's going through a celebrity area, which is great. The thing that I've got questions about is what memes are we going to see in the camp? Him stirring tea, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Or someone's going to say to him, can it get any worse? And he'll reply, it can.
Yeah.
And also,
him getting scared by nothing.
Him getting scared by absolutely nothing.
Although in the jungle, there's probably something that actually would scare him out there, I imagine.
But I don't think there would be. But also, who's going to send him that emotional message like a week from the end? Would it be Christoph Berra, Luke Chambers, Terry Connor? Who would it be?
It's got to be Tezza Connor, and Big Terry. He'll be getting involved. But Terry Connor always looks sad, so I don't know if that's going to help him too much when it comes to an emotional message with 1 week to go. I reckon he could win it if he actually went in though, because although maybe he's a bit too dour for the average I'm a Sled winner.
I remember when Jimmy Bullard went on, and all those football fans lost their minds, and this was brilliant. And then he was the first one to go, wasn't he? Because everyone hated his banter.
Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, but although Harry Redknapp won it, didn't he? So who knows? It's really hard to predict. But I may actually tune into I'm a Celebrity this year if
old Mick's on
Big
it.
Mick's in it.
Yes, 100%.
Let's go to the polls, Justin. This is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter/X because we want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the championship. So the first question we asked was this: who's winning the league in your opinion as things stand right now? Leeds or somebody else?
Leeds.
I'd say Leeds. It's difficult at the moment not to say Leeds. Mm-hmm. I know I'd still have some concerns, but they're looking the clear favourite as things stand for me. 63% of people said somebody else. 37% said Leeds. So some people still got faith elsewhere, but I think Leeds are very much looking the overwhelming favourite as things stand. Which of these would be the best choice to be the next Cardiff manager? Mark Hughes, Nathan Jones, Ryan Lowe, Stephen Schumacher?
I think a Ryan Lowe type way, they're defensively they're going to solidify. That'd be a good option. But Nathan Jones, just for pure passion, he'll work absolutely nuts off to get that team back on track.
Absolutely. That's what we want to see. I think Nathan Jones for me as well. 39% of people said Nathan Jones. 35% said Stephen Schumacher. 13% said Ryan Lowe. 13% said Mark Hughes. What are these people?
Who?
Why? And finally, who was the best WWE wrestler from the 90s? The Rock, Stone Cold, The Undertaker, or somebody else?
I was obsessed with The Rock when I was growing up. But I think that was the charisma. But in terms of if I watch it back now, it's Stone Cold.
Oh, I absolutely love Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was my hero back in the day. 36% said Stone Cold, 32% said The Undertaker, 25% said The Rock. We've had some suggestions from other people. Shawn Michaels, yes, legend, the Heartbreak Kid, Triple H, Bret Hart, Justin, Kane. You a big Kane fan?
I never really got around to Kane. I think he scared me a little bit as a kid as well. Because that whole story about him being horribly disfigured was just completely needless.
Yes, I just didn't. I can tell you what, he had some pretty worse storylines after that. So
yes, yeah, he did.
That's something I probably don't want to go into on this podcast, but that's something for another day, I suppose. Anyway, those have been the polls. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. But Patreon subscribers, make sure you hang around because we've got the extended edition of the Weekend Show coming up, which we like to call Zamora Time. We'll be talking about the We Hate Cardiff derby between Swansea and Bristol City. Middlesbrough actually taking their chances, and I grumble some more about Burnley. Zamora Time becoming a bit of a therapy session for me when it comes to Burnley, but it is good fun. So if you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get some more time every single Sunday. Head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. And now's a great time to get involved as well, because we're giving away 2 pairs of free tickets to Championship games to some lucky subscribers on the Patreon. So make sure you get involved. We'll be back again on Thursday, where we'll be talking about the first round of midweek fixtures of the season, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go, Justin shaking his head.
That's our first 6 a.m. record of the season.
This is what we're here for, ladies and gents, and we look forward to seeing you then for that. This has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.